Right, so in this Stormworks Basics video, somebody sent a comment asking how well the microcontroller in the Stormworks Basics car would function on a helicopter. So I figured the best way to probably do this is actually build a helicopter and do a little tutorial. So let's open up the latest Stormworks Basics car. So we did AFR last, so here it is. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my select tool, my selection grid tool. I'm going to select the microcontroller. Go ahead and copy that, and let's just start a new vehicle. We'll just put this off to the side for now. We'll paste it. We'll paste, we'll clear, and we'll go ahead and we'll save this. Alright, so it's going to be the Stormworks Basics helicopter tutorial. We'll save that. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's get working on this helicopter here. So, this is designed for a car, so, generally if I'm going to build a build, I will start out fresh and make new microcontrollers, which it has its pluses and minuses. One of the great things with Stormworks, as you can see, I took a whole microcontroller easily, put it in a new build, but the other thing you can really do in Stormworks that's nice is you can go in and you can completely select, like, say, that whole section, copy it, and paste it in another microcontroller. So, if I was to start a helicopter of my own, I would probably just copy out sections. Like, this is the whole, essentially the fueling section for running the engine. But with this would take a little extra time. So let's go ahead and let's we'll keep the parts we need, and we'll start deleting the parts we don't. So we need a starter, so that's good. This here is the whole fuel and air ratio section. We'll keep that. We'll come down here. As you can see, this is the clutch section. We're not going to need the clutch. What we're going to do is make a very simple helicopter that does not clutch the rotor. We might leave the clutch on there. Like in real life, you would start up the engine first, and then you would engage a clutch for the rotor. So we'll keep that for now. Coolant pump we'll keep. Alternator we'll keep. Gearing we do not need. This gear here is for reverse anyways, so we can delete out the gearing. We're not going to switch gears. So we can also come in here. That was gear 4. So let's get rid of gear 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're not going to have multiple gears for this helicopter. We're going to have just the single gear. This section here is automatic transmission. We also do not need any sort of transmission for the build. So let's just double check, make sure that I'm not going to need anything for this this transmission. That's port steering. So we don't need port steering, of course. So we can delete that. And then here would have been gear indicator. We don't need that. We don't need anything to do with gear. Anything to do with automatic transmission. So we'll go there and we'll just delete all that. So we're left with gear indicator and port steer, and we can go ahead and we can also delete those. So gear indicator goes, port steering goes, variable brakes go. Let's go through. Seat we want engine, we want RPS, we want starter, air manifold, fuel, clutch, coolant pump, radiator, alternator, and battery. So that's good. So as you can see, we're already shrinking this microcontroller, which is nice, especially because we're going to make a nice tiny helicopter. So right now this is what, 3 by 4. So that's pretty good size-wise. So let's update this, and we'll go back. All right. We theoretically could make this even simpler by doing it with a basic engine, but I like to always go right to modules. Modules help you get more power, and you can make them more compact. So I like that. So I selected my microcontroller again. I'm going to cut it again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it over to this block that starts when we do a new build. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to go to the merge tool, and I'm going to make it all red. And now I can delete that block out. And as you can see, we want our primary, I probably could just delete the block to get the red, but that's a good habit to get into in case you already have a bunch of stuff you don't want to just delete. So, all right, so we have this base section. That's our microcontroller, and we're going to start building the helicopter, and we'll just we'll build it right on top of this microcontroller. So let's cut it. I'm just going to flip it, and we'll paste it again. Alright, so the next thing we'll do is we'll get a seat. So this is going to be a very basic helicopter. We'll do compact pilot seat. You know, just like the Stormworks Basics car, I'm not going to go into, you know, fleshing out an exterior or anything else. We're just going to go right to making, you know, a helicopter. Alright, so the next thing we want is we're going to do gyro. Now, these gyros aren't perfect. They can use a lot of tweaking, and but they are very helpful, and they make things pretty easy to start. So I'm just going to just need to put a block down here so that I can get to the gyro. And we'll do a gyro, and we'll kind of make it as a firewall. It's behind us in the seat. And that will, see if I can actually get that even closer here. We'll cut that like that, we'll paste it. And then I probably can't merge it right away. I'm going to have to, what I'll do here is I'll cut my seat, put a block here, and then merge it. And then as you can see, you can delete that merge. This is still one piece now. And then I can go back, selection grid, seats back, paste. We'll merge the seat. Alright, good. So now we have a nice compact area here. We have our gyro, we have our microcontroller. So let's actually, I'm trying to think, do I want the gyro facing the other way? I think I do. That'll make it a little easier to attach things to it. So let's go like that. And I'm probably going to run the same problem, not being able to merge it very easily. So let's just go like this. And with a couple blocks, as you can see, I can merge it. So let's delete the blocks. Okay, so I like that better. So now we have our gyro, and we have our microcontroller here. So this is going to be very basic. You know, of course, you can get into much more complicated helicopters. All right. So let's just move. We'll keep it up in the air here. So we're going to do a conventional helicopter. Single rotor, one tail rotor. And subsequent videos, I'll probably go into things like counter-rotating props. Alright, so let's start creating our motor. So we want to do a pretty tiny little helicopter, just kind of a personal helicopter. Once you have the fundamentals down, you can really get into, if you want to, you know, add passengers or make it double wide or whatever. You know, this is just kind of getting into the fundamentals. So let's start going into our modulars. Let's start building our motor. We don't need an incredibly powerful engine for this. It's always good to have a little bit of power. So let's go ahead and we'll grab some crankshaft pieces here. All right, now when you're building, you know, one of the things is a lot of people have stability issues, and you need to understand the fundamentals of stability. So for an aircraft, you want the center of lift to be above the center of gravity. So in this case, right, so if it was an airplane, that would be wings. If it's a helicopter, that's going to be your rotor. So you want your center of lift, which is the center of your rotor, above the center of gravity. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to try to get the center of gravity come back so that it goes right to our right to where our power output comes for our engine. So we're going to go ahead and we'll grab our crankshaft and put it. We don't need a terribly powerful helicopter. I'm trying to, let's see. Theoretically, I could make this up to a 6-cylinder right here, so let's leave that there. Let's go ahead and actually, let me go one more lower. Also, for stability, the lower you can get that center of gravity, the less likely it's to tip. You know, an aircraft, if your center of lift is up here and your center of gravity down here, it's going to act like a pendulum and keep it nice and straight. And I already saw a problem here with that. I want to make sure that the circle is lined up. Let's actually delete this. Let's try to go small on the engine. Let's go clutch. Okay, let's go belt drive. 1x1 belt drive. Alright, so next we're going to want an alternator. And for this, I'm going to shut off symmetry. Symmetry's been off. Okay, good. Alternator goes on there. We want a coolant pump. Alright, so let's look at where our pump is coming from here. That's fine. We have it going up and we have it going out. That works for us. The next thing we want is we want a starter. So we're going to go starter here. And that is upside down, so there we go. Okay, so as you can see, we moved our center of gravity backwards a little bit, and we also moved it down because of where the weight is. Alright, so next thing we need to add is a couple cylinders. So, well, hopefully we can do this as a 2-cylinder motor. Again, I want to make this, nice and tiny. Alright, now the other thing you want to do is you need to think about what is your ballast. And what I mean by that is what weight is going to change. Alright, and so, for example, the engine's not going to fall off at some point, we hope. The seat's not going to fall off. We are adding a person on there, so our character actually weighs something. I think it's like 75, not 75 kilograms. Yeah, but I think it's 75 kilograms. So, we add a weight on the front. But one thing we're going to add is fuel. So we're going to add a little fuel tank. So often, like if we're going to put a ton of fuel in this helicopter, we try to keep that fuel towards the center of gravity. And one of the reasons for that is, let's say we put a fuel tank. Let's do tank. Let's do, just for the example, we'll do a huge, large tank. So let's say we put it back here. You notice how far back the center of gravity went, right? It actually went perfectly where we wanted it. But the problem is, as soon as we burn that fuel, the center of gravity is going to go back there and it's going to be off balance. So what would be better is, we're not going to do huge tanks, but let's say we put it here, right? We want to keep our center of gravity in the middle. Let's put on symmetry. We want to keep our center of gravity in the middle. As you can see, it didn't move very much, and now if we were to burn that fuel, it doesn't move very much. So you want to keep your fuel as well, because as you burn fuel, you want your center of gravity to stay pretty consistent. Alright, so that's good. So next thing we'll do is we're going to set up our cooling, because that can require some pumping, and we want to do that. So let's do a radiator. We're going to actually do the old radiator. These are one of the least efficient. So if you can get something to cool with one of these, you know that if you added more cooling, it's going to be even easier. So what we need to do is, again, we need to do some tricks here where we add a block. We don't need symmetry on, and we'll add a radiator now. And this will allow us to hopefully attach it. Let's see. If you need to, you just keep adding blocks like this until you get it attached to where you want it. So this should be fine here once I get that in there. Okay, there we go. So that's where I want it. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to delete out these blocks. Alright, so now as you can see, we have a radiator there. So this doesn't matter where we're really going in, because as you can see, this is going to be fluid out and this is going to be fluid in. As long as they loop, we're fine. Okay, and then alright, if you see people putting in fluid tanks, that's the old way. You don't need to do that anymore. So we have a nice loop there. We have a cooling manifold there. So now we need to add fuel. We need to add our air. So let's do that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go back to mod for modular. Let's go to, we'll start with our fuel manifold. And one thing that will help you build a lot is if you learn what keys will rotate. So L rotates in this direction, it rolls. J pitches, and K rotates on the yaw axis. So that helps you a lot if you can do that. So like right now I need a J. Alright, so you see a lot of people flicking that like 28 times. This will save you some time. So let's go to tank. We're not going to make this a super, super huge helicopter. We're just going to do a single tank like that. As you see, we have no way to refuel it. That's fine. This is mostly for testing purposes. You would want to, you could easily route a pipe and put, something for refuel in there. So we're not going to bother with this one. So let's go. We'll do module again. We'll get our air manifold. All right. So we need to do J twice to get it up. Let's go to air, and let's get an air filter. Okay, so we're going to do very basic. I'm not supercharging this. I'm not doing anything. Now, let's look at where our center of gravity is. As you see, we've moved that center of gravity almost all the way back to over where our rotor is going to be. Plus, we need to add a tail rotor, so that's going to add more mass to the rear. So that's perfect. So we're doing really well on that. And our fuel, as you can see, is right in the center where we want it. So that's perfect. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a pipe, right? And so actually, let me start getting ready for that now. So we want to add some gearing. All right, so let's look at the gearbox. All right, so if the arrow's if the arrow is facing away from the engine, this is down gearing. So for example, for every 3 rotations of an engine, we're going to get 1 rotation at the output shaft. So in this case, our rotors. We actually want that the opposite way. We want it to be like this. So for example, for every 1 rotation engine, we get 3 rotations of the rotor. And what I'm actually going to do is, this is just something that, I know off the top of my head, is I don't want that tail rotor rotating as much as the main rotor. The main rotor needs to lift the craft up. The tail rotor, all it needs to do is help us yaw. So I'm going to put my my T-piece there. Then I'm going to do the gear. So I want the arrow to face the engine. I want to increase the RPS. I'm just going to add. We'll add one. We'll add 2 pipes there. All right, and then I'm going to go to rotors. Okay, so let's look. We have rotor large, rotor small. Let's do rotor small. All right, let's put it on top. All right, so that gives us enough clearance for our head. So, okay, that gives us enough clearance for our head so we don't chop our head off. Let's do the select tool. Let's go to the rotor. We want to make the blade pitch neutral, or else it's going to automatically try to take us off the ground. Now, blade length, let's actually make them smaller because we're a nice tiny helicopter. And let's go to 2 blades. 2 blades are your lowest blade count. The reason I'm doing this is this. The more blades you have, think about it like you're trying to paddle a canoe, right? So if you have 1 blade and you're 1 person and you're trying to paddle the canoe, right, you could probably move that paddle quickly because you're only trying to move 1 paddle at a time. Now put a paddle in each hand and try to move 2 paddles at once. Well, you're not going to be able to go as fast because you're doing double the work. Now imagine having 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So the more blades you need, the bigger the engine you're going to need to work it. Now, it might be more efficient, but, if you have 8 blades, it's like you as a person trying to, move a canoe with 8 paddles, right? It might be better for you to only have 1 or 2 paddles, right? So let's set it up like that. 2 blades, neutral, blade length. If our motor's strong enough, we can add more blades. All right, now, let's set up our gearbox. So right now it's 1 to 1. If we could try going right to 3 to 1, but let's start somewhere in the middle. Let's go to 2 to 1. And if we can add more, a higher gear ratio, that not only will that save us fuel, but hopefully we'll get a faster rotor blade. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a pipe out. And we'll make it nice and long. So some basic kind of physics here is the longer the arm, the more torque. So think of it this way. If you have a tiny short wrench and you're trying to trying to loosen a nut, you're going to have to push really hard on it to get that nut to turn. If you had a really long wrench, you can push with a very little bit of pressure, and it's going to turn. The same thing with the torque of our tail rotor. The longer that tail, the easier and the less work it's going to have to do. So let me do that. I want to actually put this on the other side like this. Okay, what is it hitting? Okay, so as you can see, it's interacting with the rotor blades, so we need to make it longer. And so I just want to make it as close to the rotor blades as I can. Okay. All right, so that's as close as will let me get it. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to select it, I'm going to make it neutral. We want it neutral. I'm going to go to 2 blades. All right. And so that's about as small as we can get. Now I'm also going to add a, I don't want, I'm going to leave damage on. And so I don't want this rotor hitting the ground. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a Rotor Guard. So off the rotor here, I'm just going to do some piping down. It's not going to be the most attractive thing, but it's going to add a Rotor Guard. So as you can see there, we just have some piping here. And as you can see, we have a Rotor Guard. So this pipe should hit the ground before that rotor and should save us from breaking our tail rotor. All right, now next thing we want to do is let's lower this to the ground and decide how we want our skids to be. So if we look at our center of gravity is now probably too far aft. Okay, so we still need to add some pipes for our skids. So let's put symmetry on. Let's go like this. Okay, let me see. I'll put them off the radiator as well. That's good there. Okay. And then let's raise this up a little bit. Let's go maybe, and we'll go one more down. So we'll put some T-pieces here. And I'll put T-pieces here. And we'll go like that. All right, and we'll just connect some pipe across, and now we have our landing skids. All right, so as you can see, our center of gravity is back here. So now we can do a couple things here. One, we could move the rotor, which may or may not do, or we can add some ballast. All right, so let's actually add some ballast. So let's do weight blocks. Okay, so now this is actually something we'd probably end up doing anyways, because if you think about it, we're going to add things like gauges, so that's going to help. And the lower you can get it, the better. So as you can see, we added 3 weight blocks. Now look where our center of gravity is. So that put it perfectly under our rotor. So that's right where we want it. All right, so that's proper ballasting there. All right, good. So we're set up here. So let's start working on hooking our engine. So let's go to composite first. We want to take the seat. We want to go to seat. We want to take just one of these engine nodes, either one. I'll take the lower one just because it's a straighter line. Let's go to data. We want RPS. Actually, let me try this really quick. Let me erase these blocks. We haven't put a battery on there yet. So let's see. We'll do one small battery. Let's also check. You know, we have a little bit of an asymmetry because we have a fuel tank on this side. We're not that much off, but let's try putting a battery. We want to get it low, so let's stick it right here. And let's see where our center of gravity is now. Center of gravity is pretty good. We still could use some ballasting, so let's go back to weight. Actually, let's do this. Let's erase the battery there and put it right here. And that gets us closer. That's still not perfect, but let's do weight block. And let's try putting one weight block here. So again, this is not meant to be pretty. This is meant to be functional. So that helps a little bit. We're not perfect, but that's pretty close. So that's good. We could even add another weight block, and that would probably push it even further forwards. Yeah, like that puts us right on the money. So let's do, let's actually do this. Let me move the battery. I know I'm being a little bit picky here. Okay, let's put the battery, where do we want it? Right there is good. Let's put some weight blocks. And actually in Stormworks, the more your craft weighs in the air, the faster it's going to go. But it's a helicopter, so it'll get a little complex. So, all right, so perfectly, as you can see, center of gravity is right under center of lift. That's good. Let's continue to connect. So we need RPS. So RPS can come off either crankshaft. Starter needs to go to the starter motor. Clutch needs to go to the clutch. Alternator needs to go to the alternator clutch pressure there. Battery can go right there to the charge. So that's clutch pressure. That's the fluid pump. So that's coolant pump. That's going to be radiator. We don't have an electric radiator. Now, one of the reasons why I started with this old style radiator is if we are running too hot, we can always swap it out for the electric radiator, and that way we know we should be able to cool our creations. And that's also cheaper. Air manifold is going to go to air. Fuel manifold to fuel. And what's this last one is radiator. Okay, so I think we're all set up. So now we should be able to start this. You know, so let's start it up with it neutralized. We're going to get rotation because I don't have the yaw control hooked up yet, but you know, let's hopefully get our engine started. So I think we still have 6 as our starter. All right, /stop. Toggle button, that's good. Let's spawn. All right, so let's try to start it up. All right, so let's go. Okay. All right, so let's leave that starter on. Let's look at our engine. So we have a stoichiometry of 2. I have no exhaust, so that tells us right there. So, you know, when people get frustrated that they forget things, you know, even people have been, you know, I have like 2,600 hours in the game. I still often forget these things. So let's type in exhaust. Put it right on top there. Let's go to the exhaust pipe. All right, let's spawn that in. And we'll hit 6. All right, so now the way we have this set up is like a car, right? So we're going to make this change as well, but I wanted to wait until we get it going. So now I have to press the W key to get going here. All right, because I don't have a gear selected, it's not going to ever probably won't add clutch. So, all right, so what we want to do is we want to make it so that this clutch will engage above a certain RPS, right? We want that rotor to start up as soon as we start the craft. So let's go in there and let's tailor this clutch to work for a helicopter. All right, so where's clutch? Clutch is here. Okay, so let's look at our conditions here. So this is all coming from, what's that? Channel 2 is a W. All right, so I want to essentially set my RPS with a throttle. So right now it's WS. I don't want WS. WS is going to be pitch. AD is going to be roll. Left right is going to be yaw. And up down is going to be collective. So none of those things. So what I'm going to do here is let me see where we're at here. So let's look at what's controlling our that's why I was pressing the wrong key. I should have been pressing. No, that was right. Okay. So what we want to do is we're going to set an RPS range that's higher, right? This isn't a car. We're not sitting there idling. We need that rotor to keep spinning. So let's go ahead and make it. We'll do 10 as our lowest RPS and 15 is our maximum. So we'll be able to throttle up that rotor a little bit. Actually, let's leave it at 5. We'll manually do this. All right, so let's look at where this is coming from. This is coming from the seat. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to make a, do I have a panel anywhere? Engine, seat. Okay, so let's change this a little bit. Okay, so what were we doing with our cars? We were using W, so we'd actually want to use more of a boat type of system to control our RPS, so we're going to do that. So let's go up down counter. Let's do 0.01 enable. We want a minimum of, so what we're going to do is instead of using this clamp and instead of multiplying out, we're going to do a we'll do our minimum RPS of 5. We'll do our maximum of 15 there. Reset value of we don't want 0. We want, that will cause our helicopter to fall out of the sky. So we want a reset value of 5 right there. All right, good. So let's go ahead. What's that controlling? That's controlling this, which we don't need. I don't know what that is. Let's delete that. We don't need that for right now. That is variable brakes. So remember, we don't need variable brakes on this helicopter. All right, so now constant number is, what's that, 0.2. Okay, that's our P value. That's fine. That can stay. This can go. This can go. This here is what we want to now control our RPS for our engine. What is 2 going to? 2 is going to clutch. 2 is our WS, so we don't need that anymore. All right. So this this was saying is we're only going to engage clutch when I'm doing W. We don't want that, so we don't need greater. We don't need greater than that. Actually, I just screwed that up. Let's put that back. Okay, so what this is that's this was reading W here. We don't need the W. We don't need the AND. We do need the RPS. So essentially what this is going to say is if we're above a certain RPS, we're going to engage that clutch. And so this is just for startup. All right, so our minimum is 5 RPS. Did I make it? Yeah, I made it 5. Let's change this. I want this to be higher. Helicopter is a little bit different. You don't want it going too low, so that makes that 10. And then if this is greater than 5, that's fine. That's going to start spinning. That's going to start spinning our rotor. If the rotor is not greater than 5, so if it's below 5 RPS, it's going to reduce the clutch. If it's above 5 RPS, it's going to increase the clutch. And then I don't want to reset the clutch at all to 0 because that would cause our helicopter to fall out of the sky. So we don't want that. So that's good for now. The clutch is set up. Next thing we need to do is we need to set up our throttle. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's decide how we're going to do that. Now, in a car, we'd have WSAD, up, down, left, right. Well, a helicopter, we're going to need all that to control it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually put a panel. All right, so we're going to do a panel here. I'm just going to place one for now. I'm not going to put my symmetry on. Let's put up panel. This is going to be for our throttle, and we'll actually, for those interested how you can do that with a panel, we'll do that. So we'll do arrow button up. This is going to be, we'll do THR for throttle plus. We want it push. We want it 1. All right, the next one here is going to be, we'll do some gauges there. So next one is 3. We want for down throttle. So 3 here is going to be throttle negative or decrease throttle. We want an arrow button. We want it facing down. We want it to be push, and we want it to be 3. As you can see, it's 1, 2, 3. All right, good. So next we want to do is let's read. Let's make this RPS. Let's make this throttle. So we'll make 2 RPS. Be a dial. Just do 0 to 1000. All right, so that's 2. So let's make it 2. And then the last one is throttle. Let's go. We'll do a gauge. We'll make it vertical. It'll be. What I'll do is I like to turn it to percentage. That gives us a little bit more granular control, or makes it a little bit easier to visualize. I guess it doesn't matter. We'll just make it 0 to 1, and we'll make that 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. So now I'm going to actually move it where I want it. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put it where I want it. So I want it right about. So you can see it interacts there, but if I go lower, it's fine. So let's paste that. All right, so let's just put it on a post, and we'll merge it. Okay, so that's going to be our throttle control. So now let's look at our. We'll look at our microcontroller. So we have engine. Unfortunately, I might need to make this microcontroller bigger. Yeah, I'm going to need to make the microcontroller bigger. So what I'm going to do is now, if I just try to make this microcontroller bigger, it's going to delete some blocks. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to move it and push it out here. We'll paste it. Now when I make the microcontroller bigger, it's going to, it won't break any blocks. So we're going to update that, and now we're going to see, now when I put it back, as you can see, it will delete those, it will delete what I want, which is I want it to delete those weight blocks. All right, let's merge that back together. All right, now as you can see, it pushed our center of gravity back again. So let's go ahead and we'll put some weight blocks back on for ballast. Now, ballasting is often good to do at the end just because, you don't know where it's going to be. As you can see, that's even too much there. Yep, that's perfect. So the further these blocks go forwards, the longer the torque arm, and so the fewer of them we're going to need. All right, so that's going to give us space to attach this panel. And now the reason I needed more than one node was, remember, I want to read information. So I want to add a composite. I want it to be an output. That's going to be the panel. All right, now I want to add another node. This is going to be composite input, and that's going to be your panel. So that's going to be reading some of that information for us. So let's go in here, and let's find them. They're right here. Let's try to just select the 2. So I grab both of them, so panel in and out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, in order to work this up-down counter for a throttle, remember we just made that gauge. So what we want to do is we want to read on-offs. So 1, remember, is our increased throttle. That's fine. We want to copy that, Control C and V. And 3 is going to be our down throttle, to decrease our throttle. So that's good. We're going to take those, we'll put them up here, and we'll go like this. Okay, so that's going to increase or decrease our throttle. All right, so now remember we made a gauge that's going to read that throttle where our position is, right? So if I remember correctly, that was 4. So we want to read, we want to write a number. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to write a number. Now we had 2 numbers to write, right? We wanted RPS, and we wanted both RPS, and we wanted the throttle position. So we want to start with the RPS is going to be 2, throttle position is going to be 4, so we need 3 nodes, so it's going to be 2, 3, 4. All right, so we're going to read the throttle position. That's going to be 4. And then we wanted to read RPS, which is where? I think it's below us somewhere here. Let me see. Okay, it's above us. It's up here. This is RPS. And RPS is going to be position 2. As you can see, it says start channel 2, so it'll be 2, 3, 4. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to take this and connect it to our panel. That will read out our numbers to us. I'll move it there so you can see all the nodes. All right, so now we should be able to control our throttle. So let's update that, and let's see if I can control my throttle. All right, so I haven't attached it yet, so let's do that. So let's go composite, panel to panel, panel to panel. All right. And let's go ahead and try this. All right, so now I should be able to throttle this engine up. Now remember, it's going to maintain a minimum of 10. I think I put a 2-to-1 gear ratio on that, so that should give us an RPS on the blades of, on the main rotor of 20. If I go to the maximum of 15, that'll give us a main blade rotor of 30. And this tail rotor is going to only move at the same speed as the engine. So that's going to put less load in the engine. All right, so let's go 6 to start stop. All right, so there, as you can see, it was using the clutch. It auto-clutched as soon as we get above 5 to start the rotors. All right, so let's look at our gauges. So we have RPS is 9 RPS. Now remember, we set the minimum to 10. That's fine. We're going to lose some with some resistance. Throttle is at 10 RPS. I'm going to start to increase the throttle. All right, now with the helicopter, we can just leave it there where we want it. So I can either do 20 RPS on the main rotor, or I can do 10 RPS on the main rotor. Now, if I go down, we should only be able to go down to 10. All right, good. So now we, our engine is set up. All right, and see, as you can see, it goes down. It's going to go below 10. That's fine. That's just, you know, it has some resistance. All right, so now we're going to actually set up so we can control this helicopter. Oh, and I died. Okay. I jumped into the rotor blades. All right. So, yep, you should always shut your rotor blades before you jump off your seat. All right, so again, so that's one of the reasons I left player damage on, I left vehicle damage on, is I want to find my mistakes as I'm building something. So that's why I did that. You know, why I do that when I'm building, because, you know, you'd forget to, oh, the rotor's too close to the person or whatever. So we can't get off this with that rotor spinning. So one thing we could do is raise it if we wanted to or needed to. All right, so we've got a working rotor. Let's work on actually controlling this helicopter. So again, the gyro was not perfect in Stormworks. So let's go down. We'll make it the 4 key is activate gyro. It's auto hover, but you know, is what it says on there. But we'll do gyro. Activate gyro as a toggle off the 4 key. All right, and then so let's start connecting. So let's go to data. We just did 4 key, so let's find the 4. 4 goes here. It goes to auto hover. All right. Next thing we need to do is we have all these nodes. We have roll, so we want WS to be pitch. So let's find our pitch node. There's pitch. We want to find our stabilized pitch. Let's go up here. We want to find pitch. We want to take our roll. We want to go down to roll. We want to take our collective. That goes to up down. Now we want to find the next node on our seat. That's up down. Up down should go here to up down. AD is going to be our yaw. Okay, and roll is going to be, nope, AD is not our yaw. AD is going to be our roll. And then left-right is going to be our yaw. Okay, so now this yaw here is going to go to our tail rotor. Now we're probably going to have to fix that yaw at some point. That tends to be a problem if we do a single rotor. We have torque issues. Make sure these are all connected. So we have stabilized roll, yaw, pitch, and we have up down. So let's spawn this. Let's not even start it yet. Let's just watch it. So this is all my tools from dying. All right, so now let's look at the rotor blades. If I pitch forwards, if I go, there's my roll. Now forwards won't show just because it has 2 blades. Up down, as you can see, it's gently moving up down. Let me see where I am here. Okay, there's roll. There's pitch. There is my yaw right there. As you can see, my tail rotor is moving. All right, so let's start it up. All right, so as you can see, like I said, we're gonna have to work on that yaw, which is fine. So I'm going to control it a little bit with my... I'm going to go ahead and I'll turn the gyro on. So as you can see, I think my... what's going on here? Alright, so we're... You know, yaw is always going to be the problem with the helicopter. That's going to take your most work to fix. Alright, so I think I'm not producing enough RPS, so let's increase it. So I might need to actually have a tail rotor that moves a little bit faster. We'll see. Nope, that's working. Okay, so that actually works all right. Okay, so we're doing pretty well here. We'll have to fix that. You know, yaw is something you're always going to have to work on if you don't. You know, if you have the if you just have a single rotor set up. You know, at some point we'll do a coaxial rotor. So now one thing you can do is if you hold down Alt, you can use trim to trim the yaw out like that. But as you can see, we have a... I'm having to do a ton of yaw. That's over 50% of the blade just to keep us going straight. So what we can do there is we can... I'm going to add a PID to control the yaw, so that we're not turning if we don't want to. Alright, so now this also showed us that 15 is probably pretty low. As you can see, we're not going terribly fast. Our tail rotor is moving way too slow. You know, our tail rotor is moving too slow for us, so we can actually probably increase our gear ratio. Our motor is having no problems reaching our RPS, so we can actually add more gearing and speed some things up. And that will actually help our tail rotor as well. So I'm going to recall this. Alright, so now the reason I know that is you can hear the engine's not struggling at all. We have plenty of power, so we can increase our gear ratio. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's go all the way to 3:1. That's our highest gear ratio, and let's see how that works. Let's also go here. I want to increase my RPS. So 10 was too low. So 15 was about as low as we want. Let's go 25. We have to be careful. If we get over like 70 RPS on the rotor blades, that's going to start to cause huge instabilities. If your helicopter is very wobbly, that's often because your main rotor is moving too fast. All right, excuse me, I was just eating a little bit. So we'll try 15 and 20, see if that's better. All right, so now let's go in and let's spawn. All right. All right, so now if we hold down the Alt key, remember we did like 54% trim to start. Let's start that there. So that's going to just keep some yaw in the tail rotor to start with. Now we're going to get the spin here because the tail rotor does not have as much RPS as the main rotor because, as you can see, we put it post gearbox. So until we spin up, oh, I'm already crashing. Until we spin up, we're not going to have that tail rotor enough tail rotor effectiveness. So we'll work on that in a second. All right. So what I'm going to do is this. Let's actually go like this for now. So as you can see, we had plenty of power. So even at 3:1, we have no problem. This motor is plenty powerful. So I'm going to paste that down there. And the reason I'm doing this is I need more yaw control. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the I'm going to gear up the engine. So I didn't have enough RPS going to the tail rotor. Okay, let's merge this up. Okay, so now before, you know, when this was at 20 RPS, we were getting 20 RPS on the tail rotor, but we were getting 60 RPS on the main rotor, so we didn't have enough speed on this tail rotor to account for the yaw. We'll make that more automatic here in a moment. All right, so let's try this, see how this functions. I also didn't have my gyro on. I was doing it manually. Let's turn that gyro on with 4. Let's turn the engine on with 6. Alright, so you hear the engine stalling a little bit more, and that's because we're trying to turn that tail rotor more. And as you can see, remember, I had 50-something, I had 50% trim there on the tail rotor before. I'm going to shut off damage and player damage here. It's just causing me problems at the moment. Vehicle damage, player damage is off. Okay, now I can actually go up and not have to worry about dying. And I'll go back to what I was saying before the circus came to town. Okay, so what was happening before is because I was not multiplying this tail rotor, we needed to do big blade changes in order to account for yaw. As I sped that up, we didn't need that. So, all right, so this has actually functioned pretty well now, besides me hitting the wall and that's just me not paying attention. All right, so good. So our motor, even though it's a tiny little motor, we have more than enough power. But this is also very light craft. This is 176 kilograms. You know, so this weighs what a motorcycle weighs IRL. So, all right, so that's pretty good. All right, so next thing we want to do, let's jump in. Let's see what. Let's go ahead and jump in, and we'll set up our yaw. That's going to be one of the things a lot of people struggle with. So first thing we're going to do is let's spawn it. And I want to do kind of a static test here where I just start the, so I'm going to put the gyro on 4. I'm going to start the engine. I want to make sure, I'm going to check my trim. As you can see, I left some trim in there. I'm going to take all that trim out. So I want 0 trim. And we'll see how close that, we'll see how close we are to having this set up. All right, so as you can see, they're all 0. Let's go ahead and start it. The gyro is on, and we can look at this by going page up. As you can see, where it says true there, the red, that means the gyro is on. Let's go 6 to start. All right, now we can also tune to get rid of that. So I'm going to just control this manually. I'm just tapping the right arrow key. All right, I'm going to press down on collective. I'm actually going to put some collective trim in down. That's just going to keep us on the ground. All right, now I'm going to manually pick us up and see if we yaw. Okay, so I need some more. So I'm going to start putting some yaw trim in. Now, as you can see, before we had to have 50. Let me get us outside. That'll just make it easier for me to show you what I'm actually trying to do without worrying about hitting anything. Okay, so now we're outside. Let's put our collective trim. I don't want to go up or down. I just want to sit. So right there, that's set. Okay, good. So as you notice, we're not yawing left or right. You know, half of Reddit's comments is my helicopter's all over the place. So a big part of that is you need to have the RPS of your tail rotor set correctly. As you look, we're down to, remember, we had 0.53 just to keep us pointing straight. We only have 0.07 now, and that's because we increased the speed with that gearbox. And if I shut off the gyro, as you can see, it's still stable. We have enough thrust coming off of that tail rotor that we don't need, the gyro's off right now. I'm flying by hand. As you can see, I barely have any correction there. Let's take it out to 0. And as you can see, we're doing a gentle rotation. So it's that tiny little bit of trim's all I need. All right, so now we know the trim setting on our helicopter. We can do this a couple ways. One, we can do it with a PID, or we can do it with, we can either do it with a PID or, you know, because we know what our trim setting is, 0.06, we can do an even simpler one that we always add 0.06 to that tail rotor. All right, now we can even go faster on the rotors. Remember, we have it set to go to a max of 20. Now let's do that. Alright, so this is going to give us more power. Alright, so let's do a little flying. So I have the gyro off. Perfect. You see that little wobble we had there? Alright, remember I was saying if the rotor blades spin too fast, you get this death wobble. Alright, and so we'll change some settings so I can demonstrate that. You'll see that a lot of people ask, what's wrong with my helicopter? It's flipping out. Well, it's because your main rotor is turning too fast. And so when you make a change in a movement, it's just a huge amount of torque, and it's causing you problems. All right, so as you can see, we're working well here. We're at 17 RPS. We get a little bit of wobble, and that's just because our rotor's turning so fast. And so what I can actually do is I can limit that RPS a little bit. All right, now this engine is plenty powerful. Oh, there we go. Perfect. That's what I wanted. See how it's kind of going out of control? That's because our rotor's moving too fast. Now, one way we can change that is we have plenty of engine power, right? We have no problem turning this rotor. We have no problem doing max of 20 RPS. So what we want to do is we want to add some load on there, and that will help us increase efficiency. So remember I said we want to start with 2 blades? That's going to allow us to add more blades. That adds more load, and that adds more efficiency. So we'll burn less fuel with more blades. So let's go back here. I'm just going to... I'll go in first person. I'll try to catch this vehicle real quick. There we go. All right, so again, let's go back to the analogy. I'm a single person. I have 2 paddles in the water trying to paddle a canoe, right? If I add a 3rd paddle, now that's even more work. I can't move as fast, but I'm able to do more work with more paddles, but I'm going slower. So what we're going to do is to do paddles, I'm going to skip 3 just because, you know, I want to see a bigger change. So let's do 4 blades. All right, and the other thing we could do is we could add a 3rd blade on the rotor, on the tail rotor. That's going to add even more effectives. We might not need any trim if we have 3 on there. And with 4 blades, this is going to put more load on the engine, right? You're turning more paddles. You need more. It's going to reduce the RPM in the engine, the RPS in the engine. That's going to cause that wobble to go away. The wobble was this blade turning faster than 60 RPS. All right, so let's jump in. Now, we'll fix this at that point, but listen to a startup. As you can hear, remember before, I'm going to take out all my trims here. Remember how it was stalling? It was stalling and it kept doing the starter? That's because it's adding the clutch too fast. So all we have to do to fix that is slow down the clutch. So let's go ahead and we'll start stop with 6. We'll do 4 to activate the gyro. Now, as you can hear, it's stalling even more. Well, that's because... let me make sure my gyro's on. My gyro's not on. Okay, that's because, remember, we're moving more paddles, right? We now have 4 paddles for the... Alright, so this is too much, I think. As you can see how slow our rotors are moving, that's too much. So 4 is way too much. So let's go down to 3. Let's actually keep this back at 2. Let's try this at 3 as well. That was just too low on RPS, so let's spawn it. Alright, so that was, we were trying to move too many paddles with this tiny engine. So 4 was too much. And you can hear it again with that, us trying to start, that it's causing us problems. Alright, let me trim manually. Let me get trimming. As you can see, I need more trimming now because the RPS is, the RPS is slower. As you can see, we're all the way down to 6, so... I'm going to have to pay attention a little bit more to this. Alright, so let's try this. Let's go back down to 2 blades. Let's keep this at 3 blades. Hopefully that keeps it so we don't need any trim in there, very little trim. And let's see how much that reduces. I'm adding too much load. The other thing I'm going to do is, I keep taking off inadvertently while I'm looking down, so let's put in some downward trim. That's going to keep us on the ground until we take off. Let's go ahead and start it. Let's put our gyro on. We'll start it. Alright, and let's watch our RPS. We were adding too many blades, and that was causing our RPS to never get up to where we wanted it. Alright, so here we're doing better now. Alright, we're up to about 15. That's good. Let's go all the way up to 20. Alright, if we still get a wobble, we can just reduce our RPS as well. We'll try adding another blade in a second. Alright, so now I have no yaw trim in there. Let me start to increase my collective and start getting it where, as you can see, it's going to turn. Now, as you can see, we're actually rotating to the left now. This is fine. 0.2. So as you can see, before we needed 0.07. We needed 0.07 to not rotate. Now we only need 0.02 to not rotate. Alright, perfect. So that's because we put up more blades on our tail rotor. So let's go 4 blades on our tail rotor. Okay. So that's going to add more load in the engine. It's also going to hopefully completely take out that... it's going to completely take out our need for any sort of trim on our tail rotor. Alright, we'll go max RPS just to test it out. We're going to test out, so we want to see if there's a wobble, and we want to see if we need any trim at all in our tail rotor. We may not now. Alright, so I'm going to start taking out my downward collective. That was just keeping me on the ground while I wasn't paying attention. And you can see we have a tiny bit of left rotation. Now we're down to 0.01 trim for the tail. Alright, so that's pretty good. I think we're going to stay there. That requires very little yaw trim. Alright, we could probably do one more blade and it would be fine. Now remember, because we added more blades to that tail rotor, it's adding more resistance. So let's see where we can get. Remember, we were at 20 RPS now, we're down to 18. Hopefully we don't get any wobble. So let's try flying. Oh, nope, we got a wobble still. Okay. But it didn't make us go crazy, so. Alright, so nice. So helicopter's nice and stable. We still get a little wobble. Now, a lot of this is that stock gyro you get in game. I still like to use them. You know, they put a little wobble. And the reason that's happening is the other thing that's happening is we're moving our blades too fast. So watch. I don't have any collective in now. Watch what happens when I press the up arrow. We start to get a wobble, especially if I have some pitch in there. Okay, so the other thing we can do to get rid of some of that wobble here is we can decrease our collective sensitivity. Alright, so as we decrease our sensitivity, so let's go into the gyro. Right here, max for roll, pitch, throttle. Let's decrease our sensitivity. So up down is going to be our collective. So let's decrease that here to 8%. Let's decrease our pitch to 9. All right, so that's going to make us, that's going to put less load. That's going to make smaller changes a little bit slower so that we're not hopefully wobbling as much. All right, so let's look at our trims. So we should have a trim of 0.02. That's not bad. Let's go ahead and start up. So we'll do gyro 4 and 6. Go ahead and we'll go full throttle. And as you can see, we get very little rotation until that rotor starts. That tail rotor starts spinning. Once we get up to speed, we shouldn't need to do any more yaw. Let's go into first person until I get out of the hangar. I fly better in first person. Alright, so now by slowing down that collective and slowing down my pitch by reducing sensitivities, as you can see, I'm not getting as much wobble. So that's because, you know, you have a big spinning blade and you're making pitch changes. You know, it's going to try to wobble the aircraft. So as you can see, we're nice and stable now. We have a nice stable aircraft. We're not doing a bunch of wobbles. I can move it around. You know, I can do a nice rotation up. So we just found out that a yaw is too sensitive. So let's decrease the sensitivity on our yaw. All right, so when you see a ton of people on Reddit and everywhere asking for help with you know, with wobbles there. Let's actually do it here on the, let me do it in the seat. So left, right is our yaw. So we're at 10. Let's go down to 8. All right. So again, this is going to make it so our blades move slower, and hopefully we don't wobble ourselves. Let's go all the way up to 20. Right now, if you don't want to keep having to change the throttle, that's fine. You can just make it so the throttle stays at 20. All right, let's go. Let's take off our downward yaw trim. All right. All right, now the other thing we can do to reduce a wobble is reduce that RPS, so we can do that manually with the throttle. So let's see if I can go full. So I'm doing full yaw there. All right. The gyro was trying to keep us stable. So we could probably knock that RPS down. So let's check some RPSs. But we didn't crash like last time. So let's see where this RPS settles, and then we'll set a new one. All right, so we're about 18. So let's decrease this to, let's try 16. Maybe 17. Alright. Yeah, so 17 gives us about 15 with the load. So hopefully we get no wobble here. Alright, so far we're pretty wobble free. Let's do a quick yaw and pitch. So I've got yaw, pitch, and collective going all at the same time. And as you can see, it's stable. Let me go the opposite direction, try to throw it up. Okay, perfect. Alright, so as you can see, got a little wobble there. That's a lot of that is the default gyro, so. Default gyro is not great, but, you know, making your own gyro, especially for a beginner craft, is going to be tough. But I'm putting this through its paces, trying to give it the hardest situation of, like, I was doing, like, 5 different controls at once, you know, trying to get it to crash, so. So this functioned pretty well. Let's go down to 15. Let's go all the way down to the basement. Let's go set this to 15, see where that goes. Settles around 12. Let's see how this performs now. Alright, so again, I'm going to try to get this to wobble out of control, see if I can do it. I'm going to do a bunch of different changes. And you can see it's wobbling, but it doesn't appear to be rolling as much as it was. There we go. As you can see, we're not going as nuts. So part of that is me reducing the RPS. So the props are moving slower, so there's less of a chance for it to go crazy. You see how it's even catching itself where before it crashed. So I think we found our RPS. So let's see. So we're going to set an RPS of 15. Alright, so let's try that, and we'll see if we can get a nice, keep it stable. And like I was saying, I was doing yaw, pitch, roll, and collective all at once to try to get it to crash. And by changing things like RPS and the sensitivities, I was able to reduce it. Now, you can also change some of those sensitivities in the gyro. That's another thing you can do. Well, we've got a nice functioning basic helicopter, so let's wrap it up in. We'll do this final change, and I'll make it, put it in a published state so that we can release this. All right. Now let's fly inside. Fly right inside. All right. Let's put her down. Right now, I'm just going to put a little bit of down collective to hold us on the ground. We'll do 6. We'll shut our engine off. All right, and on this one, we don't want to get out until that engine stops, that rotor starts spinning because chop our head off. All right, so I went ahead and I went back to minimum of 10 RPS, maximum of 15 RPS. That's going to set up so that hopefully we have better stability. We're not getting too much of a wobble because the rotor's moving too fast. Let's go ahead and let's look at our clutch. Remember, we're making that annoying stalling noise when we start. So let's half that number, so 0.5. That means we're going to put the clutch in more slowly, so hopefully don't stall the engine. Alright, so those hopefully are our final changes, and we can finish this up. So we'll put 4 for gyro, 6 for engine. As you notice, I have a lot of trim in there for the Y. That's just to keep us on the ground so it doesn't take off before I want it to. Alright. So now we should be ready to take off. Let's go ahead and go full throttle. So 10s are low. Let's go up to high of 15. I want to check that gearbox too before I finish. I can't remember where I set it. Let's start putting our trim to 0 for our collective. I'm going to fly in first person just to get out. It's easier for me not to crash. Alright, so we're outside. Let's do some flying. Let's see how if we get too much wobble. We have a tiny bit of wobble there, but nothing like before. All right. I don't have a linear speed on there, but we're doing a pretty good speed, especially for a tiny little helicopter. The real way to get good speed in Stormworks is to do a pusher prop, which, you know, we'll continue the Stormworks basics on the helicopter. We'll do a coax with a pusher prop at some point, and that will give us more speed. So as you see, this is nice and stable. Let's try to have it go crazy and see if it recovers. So we can still go crazy, but again, like I said, that's me doing pitch, roll, yaw, and collective all at once. So, like right now, I'm doing pitch, collective, and yaw. And as you can see, it's not going too crazy. If I do pitch, collective, and roll, see if I can get it to go crazy. Yeah, so even now, I'm struggling to get it to go crazy. So that's when you get it tuned up nicely. You know, you shouldn't have that problem. That's me actively trying to crash it. And it's at this point, it's pretty hard to do. You know, I'm struggling to even get it to crash. All right, so let's go wrap this up. You know, in further videos here, we can, you know, we can do some other stuff. We'll do a coaxial helicopter with two main rotors, so we can get rid of the tail, and we'll put a pusher prop on. All right, the other thing a lot of people struggle with, I'll just get into really quick, is I'm going to shut the gyro off. You should be able to fly this pretty stably without the gyro on. So the gyro is off. My hands are off the keyboard. It's drifting, but as you can see, it's stable. So I'm going to do a little bit of a correction there. My hands are off the keyboard again. All right, as you can see, it's stable. If your helicopter does not fly stably with the gyro off, the gyro is doing a ton of work. And that's when you're going to get a lot of stability problems. As you can see, I've got the helicopter set up now that it is stable even with the gyro off. Now, remember how I changed the sensitivities in the seat? One of the reasons I did the seat and not just the gyro is that gives us stability when the gyro is off. All right, if I did all that stability in the gyro, you would need the gyro on to be stable. As you can see, we can hand fly this with no gyro to aid us, and we're perfectly stable. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll descend down. I'll fly in with no gyro. And so this is our basics helicopter. You know, we're not going to put speedo on this. You know, that's just you watching me put in essentially a knots calculation again and putting some dials on. But I'm going to move. Okay, let's get in there. So this is pretty wrapped up. You should be able to take this microcontroller now and put it on your own helicopter and it should work. Now, I'll say a couple things. I know this video is getting long, but I'll say a couple things here before we finish about, you know, say you wanted to put this in your own helicopter and your motor's much bigger. Well, if your motor's much bigger, it's going to allow you to have more blades on your rotors. If your motor is, you know, if your motor's bigger, you may have the blade, you know, again, you want to add more blades to reduce your RPS. If your motor's smaller, you might need to put more blades on to get that tail rotor to not have it yawing all over the place. Yep, so we're at max 3-1. All right, so this should work pretty well as a basics helicopter. Let me just, yeah, I think we're pretty good on this. Yeah, this is a good little basics helicopter. You know, from here, I can use this chassis and we'll go into coaxial helicopters. We'll go into pusher prop helicopters. You know, that's one of the ways to get a nice fast helicopter in Stormworks is to have a pusher prop. So we can get into that into some future videos. All right, thank you for watching.